necessarily those of Fresh Air Incorporated, its staff, or its board of directors.
Hi, this is Al McFarlane, host of The Conversation with Al McFarlane. You're listening to 90.3 FM, KFAI, Minneapolis. I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to The Conversation with Al McFarlane. Glad to be here and glad to have you along as well. Always glad to be here live on KFAI 90.3 FM and at kfai.com, I think, .org, available around the world. Enjoy the station, support this program. We begin every week by offering you an invitation, asking you to accept our invitation to be a subscriber to this program, The Conversation with Al McFarlane. How do you do that? Go to YouTube, Insight News MN, and subscribe. YouTube/Insight News MN. That's our channel, our platform. And subscribe. We want you to also like it and share. We've crossed the 500 subscriber threshold. Our goal now is 1,000 subscribers. And each of you listening out here at KFAI can support us, can help us. It doesn't cost you anything, but it sure means a lot to us when you go to YouTube, Insight News MN, and punch subscribe. You get notifications when we're live. We're live every day, but once a day, once a week here live on KFAI FM 90.3 as well. Well, today I have the pleasure of having my colleague and friend from Bahia, Brazil, joining the program. Mestre Yoji Sena will be co-hosting with me today. We may be joined later on in the program by another one of my colleagues, Jonathan Palmer, just not confirmed yet, but we hope he'll be joining us. But we want to hang out today and talk about art and culture in the hemisphere and in the world. And I want to begin the program by bringing Yoji in. Yoji, how you doing, man? Buenas tardes. I'll speak in Spanish. You can speak in Portuguese. Or we both speak in English, right?
Yes. Boa tarde. Estamos todos bem aqui na Bahia.
Bueno, pues para mí todo va bien aquí también. Everything is going here as well. Yoji is the editor of our project that we call Afrodescendientes. And the beautiful thing is that with this collaboration between the two of us, we have a section of Insight News called Afrodescendientes, African Descendants. And I created the idea several years ago to do something that was multilingual, meaning, or bilingual, Spanish and English. And the motivation behind that was to recognize that there are a lot of Black people that for whom Spanish is their first language, just like English is my first language. I'm connected to the Spanish, however, because my father is Cuban born, and we grew up in a household where some Spanish was spoken, not a lot, but we were familiar with the sound, the cadence of Afro Spanish that my father spoke. And over the years, as I studied Spanish and learned it, I became familiar with the presence of Black people throughout the hemisphere as a consequence of the Spanish transatlantic slave trade. Well, but there are more Africans in Brazil, I think, than anywhere else. And when Yoji and I talked, we thought about the idea of connecting Spanish, Portuguese, and that led to a discussion of why not do some stories that also included, what do we say, Swahili, Yoruba, and then we added French,
Somali.
And Somali. So that's what we're doing. It's an exciting experiment. It's innovation and modern community journalism. We're pleased people do it. Yoji, what's happening in Bahia right now? What's on your plate?
Okay, right now, immediately it's raining like it's a diluving. But other than that, here we are in spring approaching summer. So it's kind of the uh, excitement being amped up for all the events that's happening throughout spring and summer. This last weekend, they just end with the festival called Liberatum, which is a kind of a forum that is kind of now becoming common, culture and entertainment forum centered in Afro-Brazilian culture. And this year they have the first time here in Brazil, and they have illustrious guests like Angela Bassett, um, Viola Davis, Wally
Wow.
Soyinka. Also, this next week start the uh, citywide event called Salvador Capital Afro. So that's all sort of events, music, dance, literature, fashion. So there is a lot of fashion happening here too. So Salvador, it's the cultural center of Brazil. In many ways, all the movements like tropicalismo, those that are familiar, started with here and with artists from here. So all the main cultural traits and tendencies generally happen in Bahia, because generally cultural traits are are given to society by black communities. If you look like as in the same way as in the US, the what becomes the mainstream culture that identifies the country, it is cultural productions that starts in the ghetto. So it's the same scheme here. So it's gonna be that the Salvador Capital Afro. Then there is the summer festival that's like a music festival, a mega music festival. Then there is the reggae festival in this month. Barney Spear is gonna be here. This Rhylight's gonna be here. So there is a lot of things going on, and of course everything culminates on Carnival in February.
Mm.
So they started also the season for cruise ships. So like every week there is one or two cruise ships arriving in the port. So spring and summer is a very exciting time. To me particularly, it's spring. They build up to December, up to to the Réveillon. Like first year here, it's a big also party. So, but all the time building up to the end of the year is very exciting here. People are, uh, you know, knowing that a lot of festivity is gonna happen. And the sun, like at 7:30, it's already frying the eggs if you put. So it's amazing. Today it's been raining, but
Mhm.
that is not happening that very often. Raining.
Yoji, thank you. So Dr. Irma McLaurin is here. She's the culture and education editor of Inside News. And Dr. Irma, my friend, how are you and where are you?
Well, I'm doing well. Thank you very much. And I am right here in Mobile, Alabama.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. What's on your mind when we talk about culture and education? Yoji gives us a wonderful sort of capsulation of what's going on in the Afrocentric world out of Bahia.
Well, there's last month was Hispanic Latino month. And so there were all kinds of things going on. And usually in Mobile, they have an arts walk, which is the second Friday of the month and not the first. And there are all kinds of things going on. For example, there's a bar restaurant called Kazula, which is actually owned by one of the descendants. And they usually have drumming out there and people sort of, as Yoji talked about, manifesting the African diaspora presence in Mobile. And I'm going to hear Gladys Knight on Friday in Biloxi. So there are all kinds of things. There's a Fufu Festival. I understand I missed a gumbo festival last weekend, but I made my own gumbo. So it's a lot going on. And the interesting thing about Mobile is that it is just 1 hour from Pensacola, Florida,
Mhm.
and 2 hours from New Orleans. And in between is Biloxi, Mississippi. So it sort of borders these 3 states. And so you can just, within 2 hours, you could be anywhere and take part in all kinds of things that are going on. And I am trying to do that.
Well, so you're a native Chicagoan, right, Irma?
I am a native Chicagoan. I was born there, but I'm also product of that mass migration. The greatest internal migration in the history of the United States was when Black people of African descent moved from the South to the North. My mother is originally from Lower Peachtree, Alabama, so I'm discovering my Bama roots. And my father was from Georgetown, Mississippi. And so they were part of that internal migration. My grandmother came here, and the uncle that I came to Mobile to take care of, he was actually born in Alabama, but they moved to Chicago and then subsequently moved to California. So I have cousins on the California side, but a large portion of us stayed in Chicago in the Midwest. And now my sister lives in Minneapolis, as you know, and played for the Lady Gophers.
And that's how we connected. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I want to come back before the program is over and talk about the feelings and the experience of rediscovering and reconnecting with the South. And that's a wonderful thing. I think there's stories that don't end. You mentioned Casula, the venue, but the name Casula is such a rich name because of Zora Neale Hurston. I want to talk about that as well. Let me introduce our colleague, our friend, our companion, Jonathan Palmer. And Jonathan Palmer is the executive director, CEO of Hallie Q. Brown Community Center in St. Paul. And among other things, Jonathan is a comic book enthusiast. And I say comic books from the sense of being a Black futurist, I believe. Jonathan, how you doing, my man?
I am doing really good. And actually, I'm very excited to hear about the last topic because my granddaughter is named after Zora Neale Hurston.
Okay.
That's my stepdaughter's favorite author, so she named her after that. I am doing great. Just coming in off of, we just had a convention here in Twin Cities Con. So a lot of great people, actors and comic book people, writers and stuff. A lot of characters, us out in costume. And there's another one coming up that called Confluence in about 2 weeks. And it's focused on Black and brown people and elevating that space. So very excited about that.
Well, let me introduce you to my featured guest today, and she's going to connect with all of us and share her story. Dralandra Larkins is an award-winning spoken word poet. She's a teaching artist. She's the co-editor of Cracked Walnuts anthology. The anthology is titled Rewilding Hope 2023. And currently she's a judge for the Minnesota Book Awards. Her work has appeared in the Minnesota Women's Press, The Edge, and other anthologies. She has performed on platforms including the Minneapolis NAACP and Minnesota Black Authors Expo, Button Poetry, True Art Speak, and Minnesota Black Business Ball. And through her performance, she weaves together words and rhythm and intimacy to create a haven for healing, advocacy, and self-discovery. I love that string of words. She's the creator of the Gumball Poetry Dispenser at Next Chapter Booksellers in St. Paul, and she serves on the Cracked Walnut Board of Directors. She's a member of the League of Minnesota Poets, and you can check her work out at dralandrawrites.com. Dralandra, welcome to the conversation. How you doing?
Good. Thank you for having me. So happy to be here with y'all.
Well, so happy to have you here. Backstory, I was at the West Broadway Open Streets event about a month ago, and I ran across a booth where a guy was playing a Chinese zither. It was a Black guy, and he was just in the zone. And I love music. I love us being us, coming from all kinds of places. So it captured my attention. And next to him, there was a guy taking pictures of people, asking them to have a seat if they wanted to. And he called it soul photography, something like that, where he asked them to pose in a certain way to focus and concentrate and look into the camera in a way that was so enabling of their ability to project their spirit, their soul. Pull that picture up if you can find that, Cooper, if you got that photograph. So we loved what he was doing. And in fact, I watched him do the photographs and asked him to find 2 or 3 of his best pictures that day and send them to me for Insight News. And he sent me this picture, several, but this one was absolutely captivating. Can you put that on the screen, Cooper? That's it. I said, man, you know, and I thought that was a stunningly beautiful, powerful, direct, and I think he was exactly right in the ability to capture the eyes, the presence, the persona, connecting from soul to soul. So, Dralandra, thank you so much for being there that day, and I feel lucky to have been able to meet you through recognizing the beauty and the presence that you project. And I'm so happy now to have you on the show, The Conversation with Al McFarlane. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Al, could I just jump in, because that portrait reminds me of a famous portrait by Zora Neale Hurston, and she's sitting in a chair, staring directly into the camera. She's holding a cigarette. And when you think about it, it is that person saying to the camera, I am here. You know, and usually people are looking away. They sort of don't seem engaged. And this portrait of Zora to me is very telling, because it's almost as if she is saying to the camera, not only am I here and present, but you better look at me. And that I'm going to be bodacious, because, you know, in the 1920s or so, you know, a Black woman holding a cigarette and a book. That's the other thing. So she's got a book and a cigarette, you know, 2 things that people didn't usually put together with Black women at that time. Their jobs were generally domestic, or they were homemakers, sometimes teachers, but you rarely saw that photograph. And here she is with her hand and her cigarette and her book, and she's just telling a story. So I think this kind of photography that invites people to, in some ways, speak to the camera is very powerful.
Dralandra, what were your thoughts as you were posing? What were you thinking? Unmute. There we go.
Dr. Irma, you're spot on. That's exactly what that pose was for me. During this time in my life, I'm on a journey, I would say, a life journey. I think I found my purpose, which is poetry and literature and in the arts. And so that day at the open streets, part of my job was to be an artist guide. And so connecting people to poetry, connecting the public to words and rhythm. And so at that time, I did feel like I'm here. This is my purpose. Like, I'm happy doing this. I'm happy connecting with the public and introducing them to education and words. And so Dr. Irma, you really hit it. Yeah, that's exactly what that was. I'm here, I'm present, I'm living in my purpose, and I'm ready to do it.
Yeah.
Talk about some of your work, and maybe you'll share some of your work. Are there pieces that are short enough to read, or is there pieces that you have memorized that you love the most?
Yeah. Your question was, are there any pieces that I love the most?
Yeah. I'll talk about your work first of all. Talk about you and your work and your mission as a human being, as an artist, and then if there's a piece or some pieces you love to share, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, sure. So as you all know, my name is Dralandra Larkins. I'm a spoken word poet based in Minneapolis, but I perform and teach all over and across Minnesota. I've, as you mentioned, performed at the NAACP, at the Black Business Ball Expo, the Minnesota's Black Business Ball Expo, and with Hennepin County. And so part of my mission is to live in my authentic truth and to really get people to do the same. I really feel like we are living in a time where everyone wants to cover up who they are and their, mission that God has given them. And so through my poetry, I try to make people feel comfortable and living in their experiences. And I will say my favorite pieces that I always usually perform is called I'm Black. So this is a piece that I'm most known for. This is my award-winning poem. And it's the poem that I performed as well at the NAACP. And so in a lot of my poetry, I mention some type of biblical reference. So whether it's, about God or a scripture. I always be sure to add a biblical reference, and that's just because I'm a God-fearing woman. My degree is in social work, but my minor is in theology. So religion and spirituality is really important to me, and it's just a way of life for me. So I often try to connect with my spirit guides and my angels through my writing. And so we call it divinatory writing. So it's when you're almost writing and you're not really thinking, you're just letting spirit take over. And so that's how a lot of my pieces come through. I let spirit come through me and I just let the pen flow. And so that's what I did with this piece I'm going to perform called I'm Black. So this is, again, the piece that I'm most known for. And just to give you a little bit of background with this piece, I actually wrote this when I was in middle school. So the poem was written in middle school, but over the years, I have rewritten it like thousands of times. So it never sounds the same. So when I say it today, it's going to sound different, tomorrow, because there's always going to be something I take out or add in, just because it's Black culture and I love it so much. And so I'll go ahead and stop talking. So this one is called I'm Black.
Well, what you described reminds me of jazz. It always is new and is always becoming, and it never is static. So please go ahead.
I'm Black, blacker than you can understand. I come from goddesses who wore their essence in the palms of their hands, always uplifting sisters like no other can. I wear the virtue, breathe life into my brothers like no other man, because I am love and light. Come look into my sight and see my reflection. My brown-skinned mother gave birth to me so I could give birth to a new generation of African queens who inspire to create meaningful inspiration. And I never embrace hatred. I got sister blood and soul all over my shoelaces. And if you tie those together, it reveals my true genes and my true nature. Right. Black like West African women with thick hips and full lips, like single mothers with tight fists, like fried eggs, cornbread, jollof rice, jerk chicken, fish chips, and grits, because this is soul food, child. Soul food. Black like coffee with no cream. Black like silent screams, Dr. King's I have a dream, let freedom ring. I'm just black. Black enough to fight for civil rights. Black enough to reflect the light. Black enough to broadcast my pride like Sojourner Truth. Ain't thou woman? Black enough so that when these words touch, they leave fingerprints on your very soul. So how black? Black enough so that when these words touch, they leave fingerprints on your very soul. Black from within. Ancestors who unlock the mystery that lies between Genesis and Revelations. Black enough to stick up like a sore thumb and represent a new nation. Black enough to spot and think before I speak. Black enough to absorb more than just heat. See, this is knowledge and I am wisdom. Understand me, see. I'm a proud African American, richness in my melanin, mocha skin, Kingsman. You know it's legit because fight the powers in the blood of my heritage. With a little bit of civil rights, Assata Shakur, single Black mothers in the struggle, hip hop, Tupac, Jay-Z is a hard knock, Motown, James Brown, James Baldwin, Huey, Colin Kaepernick, Trayvon Martin, Bell Hook, Ruby Bridges, Rena Moran, Sandra Bland, and Malcolm X, who be the keeper to my brother, man. See, when I pass on another individual, I was so lovingly, so proudly, unapologetically say, baby, you're black, blacker than you will ever understand.
All right.
Ashe, ashe, ashe.
Awesome. Irma, let me ask you to respond or to reflect on that. That's beautiful, beautiful. And it just kept going and going and going and inside and outside and inside, sideways and up and down. So it was a beautiful ride in language, in words, in sound, in feeling. So I think you accomplished the mission. And I see the mission as one that continues to evolve. It grows and grows. Irma, what do you think?
I would just respond with this. In these times, we covet things more than people, measure human worth in material terms, the price of a car, the size of a mortgage. Human life becomes a distant clap of thunder to be heard, ignored, a candle to be admired, extinguished with a quick snap of a wrist. Secure in ourselves, we observe others' destruction, passively, alone, ignoring the pressure building. Indian reservations declared national sacrifice areas. Nuclear waste dumping increased. Speaking Spanish declared un-American. Apartheid alive and well in South Africa, supported by U.S. arms. Dow Jones up, war certain. Racism spreads a locust storm. We sit alone, secure in ourselves, ignoring the pressure building. These are trying times. Hope lies dormant, a fragile flower, awaiting the healing order of the Messiah's vision to revive. Where there is no vision, the people perish. Our anger uncoils like a spring, changing our direction. We struggle, gather strength, form ever-widening circles. We flow beneath a volcano that will erupt in ashes, will be tomorrow's vision. It's tomorrow's vision. Its ashes will be tomorrow's vision of peace, love. Where there is no vision, the people perish. Rastafari say. So thank you so much.
What is that piece, Irma? That's wonderful. It's powerful.
That is a piece from,
this is like music to me.
Yeah.
What did you do?
It's called In These Times. It's from my book, which is out of print, but I hope to get back in print again, called Pearl's Song. And I was trained by Sonia Sanchez. So when I hear you speak, my sister, I hear the Black poets of the 1960s and 70s. I hear Makith Makbudi, aka Don Lee. I hear Nikki Giovanni. I hear Lucille Clifton. I hear even Chinua Achebe, who is a poet as well as a writer. And I had the pleasure of knowing James Baldwin and actually cooking for him in my house. And I remember one day after dinner, we sit in the living room and we're listening to Hubert Laws play Amazing Grace on the flute. And if you haven't heard that, and it was spiritual. And he just began to talk. And just talk about what was in his mind, in his heart. And, that has been some of my greatest memories, is that I got to know some of these people up close and personal, and very much their poetry. I used to read poetry. I was the people's poet. So during the day, I was an administrator. And then on the weekends and at night, I was the people's poet, reading poetry in support of Cuba, solidarity with Cuba, solidarity with South Africa, solidarity with the Latin American struggles. So I hear you and I see you.
And for those who are listening on KFAI, we're all connected here on video across our live streaming platform. And I was looking at Dralandra's reaction as Irma talked about she knew James Baldwin and cooked for him in her home. And Dralandra, the reaction you had was the same reaction I had. When she told me that, I said, oh, what? Because James Baldwin is so huge in my appreciation of literature and of philosophy and of storytelling and of understanding, for our people and for humanity. Let me go to Brother Yoji. Impressions, Yoji, thoughts, reactions, what are your feelings?
Well, speechless in Bahia. Both of those poems were beautiful. Here, the flow and the images that were bringing. Yeah, I felt to be in the U.S. for a minute through the wave radio.
Well, so I always, Yoji, you are a capoeira master teacher, and I visualize that what you do in your martial art, not only is it movement, but it's also poetic, that it's also creative and it's also beautiful. And so how do you, as a teacher, performer, of capoeira practitioner engage, imbibe, utilize the feelings, the stories, the poetry that we've just heard? Is there a connection to your
Oh,
profession?
there is. Um, I come from a city that I just mentioned before, where culture, every aspect of what you can define culture is very strong. So, Bahia has been the center of the South Atlantic for centuries until the advancement of steamboat. So all kind of Darwin was one person that stayed here for a while, and for example. So we but for me particularly, when I was the teenager, approaching teenager years, there is this downtown Praça da Piedade, that was this movement, poets on the praça, poetas na praça, that was all about this improvisational skills of the diverse poets that came, and I would just stop by and watch and listen and feel the same kind of feeling that I just felt listening to this uh, barrage of words in a certain way that don't let you even savor one feeling and already another one is coming, and and like you described it first, it's in certain way like jazz with the words too, right? This that you're always creating up and down, and the feeling, the pauses. So that captivates me a lot. With capoeira, it does. One of the great masters of capoeira, he was a poly artist, Mestre Pastinha. One of the things that he did was poetry, because capoeira involves, it's almost like hip hop, involves many aspects. One of them is the musicality. So we do sing and appreciate the poems on those songs. They are generally composed on quaterns, kind of pattern of rhyme, and the capoeirista, even though that the term martial arts can define us, but it in many ways encase us in just this idea of fighting or self-defense. But capoeira is an art that's very fluid. As I say, there's this the musicality aspect that comes along, understanding the poems, that in the poems and the lyrics of the songs, that many of those wisdom it's passed on or are repeated, or aspects of things that you want to emphasize are given through the craft of nice lyrics uh, that are that become catchy in a certain way. So capoeira, I think, more than other martial arts that I'm not very familiar, but I understand too that some Asian martial arts they do calligraphy and they cultivate poetry too. So yes, it's very part of our culture, and in the popular culture. Is the we have here the repente that sounds like a rap, and it is the repentinious kind of improvisation poetry that on a bass beat here, but is a tradition that is very peculiar to the culture of the inland people of the northeast. That is a arid area that reflects all the surrounding environment and the reality of life that those people have. That is kind of harsh in a semi arid environment. But the capoeira in itself, also the movement, it's very fluid, and in certain way is responding to the stimulation of the music and the song. It is not a very um, aggressive motion. Recognizes very aggressive. That is many times capoeira is confused between a martial art and a dance form that seems, because people are improvising, and it is a conversation that we have. Because the original conception of capoeira, it's a game, it's an athletic game. So in this game implies a dialogue that we are representing some form of struggle. But games are also in sort training you to when situations in reality happens, you have some kind of path to follow through how to behave. So capoeira is very poetic. You know, it's very interpretative. The capoeirista in itself, it's seen as this hippie like beatnik kind, according to the eras that we go through. You know.
Yogi, thank you. I'm Al McFarlane. This is the Conversation with Al McFarlane. Wonderful conversation as always. I love it that we are connected from different parts of the world. Yogi Sena, Mestre, Yogi Sena, Master Capoeirista from Bahia, joining us from Bahia. He's also the editor of our project that we call Afrodescendientes. Dr. Irma McLaurin is here. She's a culture and education editor for Insight News. And Jonathan Palmer is here, who is the leader of the Hallie Q. Brown Community Center in St. Paul, and also a person that is a student of culture, of history, of politics, and Afrofuturism. Jonathan, let me have you react to, I think, that phenomenal poem by Sister Dralandra Larkins, and also the phenomenal response by Dr. Irma as well.
I am just thrilled and amazed. And the interesting piece that probably is not widely known is that I write poetry as well. And if I had known we were doing this, I would have prepared a piece for the whole set. But one of my poems is featured actually down at 18th and Nicollet as a part of a community mural. It's called My Neighborhood. And so I've always been a big lover of the spoken word, the written word. I think both of those pieces were just phenomenal. They really touched into your soul about what was going on in both what you were thinking, but what they expressed to me is just that piece of clear blackness and what that means and what that connects to. So I am so glad to have witnessed this, been a part of this, been exposed to this. Dr. Irma, I am not at all surprised, but I did not know that was a piece that you had. And Dralandra, you were just phenomenal. I love where you're coming from in the expression, and your rhythm and cadence just right on point. So I am just so amazed and happy to be a part of this.
Well,
and I think one of the things I want to say, Al, one is that the poem I wrote, that poem was actually published in 1981, but it was written, way before that. And it's talking about issues that I think are timeless. I mean, apartheid is no longer, but we're looking at what's happening in Palestine. Mm-hmm. We're looking at what's happening in other places. We're still having issues on Indian reservations. If anyone, remembers, the kinds of things that have been going on in stopping the pipelines. So what is really powerful to me is the way in which, while the images may have a date attached to them, the sentiment behind them, the critiques behind them are timeless. And I think that's certainly what I heard with you, Dralandra, in, sort of the way that you're going back to the motherland, but also invoking all of these people who have come before you, but also who are present as part of your generation. And I think that to me is the power of poetry, is that it transcends time, that it invites us to be part of the conversation. And so I think that's what makes it, all the more powerful. And so most people don't know, but way before I was an anthropologist, I was a poet. I've been writing poetry since I was 8 years old. And one of the things that is going into my archive that I discovered is that my mother actually saved the poetry books that I wrote when I was 8. And what I found in the back of them were names of students. And apparently I thought I was an author because I used to lend them out and people would sign up and then cross out their name when they returned it. So I've been at this for a very long time.
Jonathan, let me put you on the spot. Do you have a piece in your memory or a piece in writing that you could do?
Give me a minute or two to pull something up, and
Okay,
I'll see if
all
I
right.
can do it.
And while you do that,
While you're doing that, let me go back to Dralandra. And again, thank you. I want to find out more about you. So where are you from? Are you born here in Twin Cities, or what's your genealogy?
yeah, so I was actually born in Mississippi. So when Dr. Irma was talking about the Great Migration, that, often affected, all Black families. And so my family is originally from, my dad's side of the family is from Mississippi. So I was born in Indianola, Sunflower County. And then I moved up.
That's where my family's from. My mother's side is from Sunflower County, a place called the town called Sunflower. And the towns I knew, because we used to send packages down, were Itabena, Indianola, the river there was called the Quiver River.
River, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I got stories about that. And I spent some time in Mississippi on the plantation that our family lived on. But go ahead. So talk about your folks for me.
Yeah, so wow, that's amazing how we're all so connected like that. But yeah, so unfortunately, I didn't have a time to learn my roots down in Mississippi, and so I came up here when I was about 6 years old. So my family, my mother's side of the family is from Chicago. So I bounced around when I was younger between both Mississippi and Chicago. And then due to violence and drugs on the west side of Chicago during that time, we moved here to Minnesota to get a better life for ourselves. And so we moved here to Hennepin County, and we got housed because we were homeless for about 2 or 3 months when I was 6 years old. And that honestly is what inspired me to become a social worker. So that's what I currently do in my day job. I work for the Met Council as a housing specialist, and my degree is in social work. And so because I had that experience as a child living in homelessness and dealing with poverty, it really inspired me to serve the public. And then my side thing that I do for healing for myself is my poetry and, literary arts. And so, yeah.
What does healing mean for you?
Wow. To me, healing is really a journey for self. It's a journey for self-reflection and introspection. And for me, when I heal, I always have to add God and my ancestors and my angels with it, because I feel like, healing is it's a lifelong thing. You're never going to heal, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? You're always getting met with emotional challenges from your childhood, and you always just have to kind of keep working on those issues and addressing them. And so that's often what I tell my clients when I'm speaking with them about some of the things that they're going through, is that you really can't say one day I'm just going to wake up and I'm going to heal from that. It's not possible. It takes a team, and for me, it's a spirit team, and yourself, obviously. But yeah, and so I was going to mention too to touch on what Dr. Irma said about having timeless poetry, because one of the reasons I said that I'm always revising my poem "I'm Black" is because unfortunately we're still living in those times. So even though I'm talking about leaders who are like Sojourner Truth, who are deceased, but it's like we have these new leaders emerging. It's like Colin Kaepernick, Amanda Gorman, who said her poem to the president. So it's like I'm always adding in those new additions, always taking people out. And I say it's unfortunate because it's unfortunate that we're still dealing with these issues like mass incarceration, police brutality, poverty. But it is timeless because that is our history. It's part of our history. And so that's why that poem is always going to be rewritten.
Talk about your family, mom and dad, grands. What if I ask you that? Who are your people? What's the answer to that?
Yeah, so my mother I have 2 older brothers, and I'm the youngest. So unfortunately, I don't come from a strong family bond and family dynamic. So really, it's me and my mother it's just us. And so a lot of what I do is for the both of us. And when we talk about closing generational curses and cycles, that's part of my work with poetry. And so my mission is to, because there's no one in my family, unfortunately, besides myself, who has an education, a college degree, who even has a license, right? Like we talk about, like even family, people, my family members have permits. They don't have license. And so things like that, it just makes me really passionate and wanting to dispel and dismantle that I don't want to say a curse, but that cycle that's going on in my family. And so I do that a lot through my poetry.
Do you think about being an African person? Does being African mean something to you? Or do you see yourself as, you use the phrase African American in your poem? How do you navigate your Africanness, if you do, and your African Americanness?
So unfortunately, due to colorism, I don't have any background in my African heritage. I'm not sure where to start. I don't know if that's West Africa. I'm not sure if it's East Africa. So unfortunately, I can't connect with my African heritage in the way that I want to due to colonism and, just not having that information available to me. But as an African American woman, I absolutely connect to that part of me. My grandmother, the women in my family, I look up to and look at them, and I really, to me, they are the definition of what it means to be the essence of a Black woman. And so when I think about my identity, is often coming from starting from my grandmother. 74 years old, and she's worked on the plantation. And my other grandmother on my father's side, who's deceased, was also who worked on the plantation as well. And she actually had a heart attack from working. And so just when I hear those kinds of stories, I know that for me and my lineage, it's all about hard work and just having that strength and power. And so, again, for me, that the African-American piece comes from my family and what that means to me. But unfortunately, I just don't have any connection to the African heritage.
And I don't think we have to apologize for that. I mean, we are who we are. And that means that we're a syncretic people. We were brought from Africa. Some people are fortunate to be able to have traced, their ancestry, their names that pop up. I went to college with a guy named OJ. And when I really said, dude, from Chicago, what does OJ stand for? He said Onisha. Well, there's the Onisha, market in Nigeria. It was passed down. And he just it was OJ. So some people have elements they can put onto, but I don't think we need to apologize for being who we are, because the culture that we have created, which has woven together the past, what was before us, and what we created literally almost out of nothing, and what we were able to appropriate from the existing cultures around us, and what we invented, which America wants to appropriate all the time. And jazz is a good example. Now they talk about jazz as American music, not Black American music or African American music, but American music, as if it has now been deracialized. And I see this in art museums where they talk about artists as American artists. I've had this ongoing fight with the North Carolina Museum of Art, because I said, when people walk in and they see a painting or a sculpture of a Black person, they have no way of knowing by looking at the name if the artist who created it was Black. And by deracializing it, before you would say Afro-American, you give the perspective, because most art museums are filled with white artists. They just assume the artist is white. So I think we should be proud of being African American. We are a fusion. We are a syncretic people. And, I don't think we need to apologize for that.
Let's take a break and we'll continue the conversation in a second. Before I do this break message, I want to thank all of our listeners and viewers who helped KFAI raise over $57,000 member support. $57,000 in the past 2 weeks. We hit our targets, hit our goals, and we thank you all. And if you didn't get a chance to make your pledge, you can still do it. KFAI.org, call the station. We appreciate your support and your help. Let's listen to this message and we'll come right back. Are you or someone you know recovering financially from the COVID-19 pandemic, the lockdown, or any other reason? If so, help is available. Findhelp.org is a site to find a wide range of resources, including food, medical care, and more. The best part is based on your zip code. Visit findhelp.org, enter your zip code and the service you need. You'll get a map directing you to the organizations that can help you. Help is waiting at findhelp.org. If you need help starting anew, findhelp.org is the site for you. I'm Al McFarlane. You're listening to the Conversation with Al McFarlane. Tuesdays, we've been doing a format. We're developing it that I take from reading the work of Ikwe Arma. One of the books of his that I read that I love so much was called Wat Nut Shemsh, and it's hieroglyphic, translated, the way of companions. So I've invited people that I want to be and consider companions to join me from time to time just to share. And that's the esteem with which I hold Dr. Arma McLaurin, Brother Jonathan Palmer, Brother Maestri Yogi Sena, and others. I think that for me, the spark, the motivation is to be with and around and engage with people who share a vision of what it means to be a human being, and the best human being possible, who are also committed to sharing that in their daily work, their daily lives, their daily walk. And we amplify each other. Not that we agree on everything, but we sharpen each other in conversation and in being with each other. So that's what we're doing today, and we'll continue to do that, inviting different people to come and connect and converse with us. And today we were pleased to have Sister Dralandra Larkins, a poet and a teacher, and heard a very powerful presentation. To my surprise, Dr. Irma's response was a poem that she wrote, and to my surprise, discovered that Brother Jonathan Palmer is a poet as well. Jonathan, let me throw this to you. Did you find a piece that you want to share?
I did. It's not quite in the same vein, but I'm going to go with this.
All right.
It is called Sweet Lilac in Spring. I feel so different, special, excited to be holding you now. The feel of your skin beneath my fingertips. I breathe deep, inhaling the scent of you, warmly flooding my body. Sweet lilac in spring. I kiss your shoulder tenderly and squeeze you again. Your softness molding into me, my emotions flowing over me. I can't remember when I felt like this. Your eyes, your lips, your heart beating next to mine. Do you understand it? Do you sense it? Do you feel it? I want to wake you to ask, but I let you sleep, gently stroking your hair. And the happiness fills me, mind, body, and soul. I love you.
Whoa, go, Brother Jonathan. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. Give us a little bit of love for this time. All right.
Jonathan, that's nice, man.
Thank you.
Hey.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Well, listen, the process, Dralandra, you call this healing, right? And so I tell you that listening to you and to Irma and Jonathan, and even the work that Brother Yogi discussed, I see you see us all as people seeking healing, but also as healers. That it's the act of healing that actually provides healing for us. Does that make sense, Dralandra?
Yeah.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah. So when you, the first thing when you said the act of healing is what heals you, the first thing I thought about was the work that I do. So helping people helps me. And I think what happened over the years is that I've helped so much that I forgot to help me. So during that act of healing, I actually forgot to pour into my bucket. And so when I talk about my writing process, the way I even got back into poetry, so, I was so focused on obtaining a degree for myself. And like I said, trying to break those curses and get that degree. And so in 2019, when COVID came around, it was like God was forcing all of us, the universe, to go inside and heal, right? And so I did that. I did exactly that. I followed God's instruction. And so when we were during our quarantine, what I found myself doing was connecting back to my writing, which is what initially healed me as a child. Like when I was going through domestic violence as a child with my father, I would, write stories to escape that. That was my way of healing when I was a child. And I had lost that over the years when I was, going through college and trying to really figure out who I am as a woman. So when I got out of that and had time to sit down and I was quarantined, that's when I found out like, oh my God, writing is what heals me. And so we came out of COVID in 2020, everything opened back up. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna go and do an open mic. And when I came and I did the open mic at Black Table Arts in Minneapolis, it's an organization that supports Black writers. And so when I came out of that open mic, I just felt so free. I mean, free as a bird. Like it was like all my worries had left. It was all on the stage. You know what I mean? Like all of it, I left it all on the stage. And ever since then, I was like, I want to keep feeling this. I want to keep feeling that healing, right? And so, and that's how the journey has started. And so since 2020, I've been doing this professionally as a poet. And so when you, again, talk about the act of healing is what heals me. So me saying my poems and letting my voice be heard is what heals. And so I think that's the key that's the key to healing for a lot of people. If you want to quote unquote heal and be practical about it, go back to your childhood and think about what was it during childhood that made you feel alive? What was it during childhood that made you feel connected? And for me, that was writing. And so if you want to heal, I would tell anybody, go back to your childhood and connect with your inner child.
Jonathan, you're nodding your head on that. What are your thoughts?
It is so true, and one of the things that I do is I have a couple central pieces. I have certain music, certain movies, certain books that are my center. So whenever I'm feeling off, whenever I'm feeling lost, whenever I feel too far down, I go back. And it's funny, I went and watched some of those last night, and I was like, yes, this brings me back. You know, we talk about, Dralandra talked about saving other people without saving yourself. That's what we do. Anybody who's out there doing good work, we're always thinking of the other people. And for me, that's a very superhero mindset. You just go and you help people, you save people. But that's also the kind of piece that connects me back, thinking about why I do the things I do, what's important. And all of that goes back to, you know, as a kid, that's what I wanted. I wanted to be a superhero. Those were job options when you were a kid. You could be Superman. And so, you know, you grow up and it's a slightly different turn, but going back to that central point of when you were innocent, ready to go out in the world, not jaded, and you have that piece that it dreams, that looks for what it loves and connects into that. That's the piece that gets you centered and gets you back where you need to be.
What are the movies and what are the songs you listen to?
The movies, I've got a few. Remember the Titans.
That's a football movie, right?
The football movie, Denzel Washington. This, you guys are all gonna laugh. Barry Gordy's The Last Dragon. It's a black kung fu movie from the 80s that is comedy, shown up the Shogun of Harlem and stuff like that. And then Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. And Harvey, and there's a couple others. Songs, it is Keep the Faith, Michael Jackson. It is Adore, Prince, and Billy Joel's You Only Human.
Irma, what about you? What kind of music or what things do you do to get yourself set, centered, recharged, refocused?
Move to Mobile, Alabama.
Get in the middle of the middle.
It's a whole different vibe in the South. When people come into the doctor's office, they say good morning to everybody. When you go into a restaurant, people actually talk to you. I had 2 Black women who were commenting on my hair, and we went out the restaurant and we started talking. And one said, well, you know, I've been wanting to go. I think I want to move to North Carolina. And I said, why? You know, this conversation of us connecting and then continuing, and we went and then went for a walk. You know, I was telling them places I had found of, you know, this art gallery that had the largest collection of art in Mobile, and they didn't even know about it. And they were born, you know, they grew up there. And I said, this conversation would never have happened in North Carolina. So there's a kind of connectedness and a sense of community. You know, when I go into restaurants, I now know who the bartenders are. I know who the waitresses are. You know, people speak to you. They comment. One guy went into the bank and he said, I saw you walking and I saw that hair. He said, and you got here before me. You a fast walker. That conversation would never have happened in North Carolina. So for me, the recharging is being in spaces that energize me, whether that is domestic or international. I'm coming back to Brazil, Yoji. I just got to figure out when, but I'm coming back to get recharged. And it's also, you know, I used to teach writing. And so writing can be cathartic. It can be, I see writing as a form of activism. So to me, Vincent Harding used to say the role of the poet is to speak the truth to the people. And so we have to speak truth to us and to everybody else.
We close it with that. I'm Al McFarlane. This is the Conversation with Al McFarlane. What a wonderful program. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you next time.
Okay.